Yeah.
All right. So we're going to talk about What If Season 2, which came out right before Christmas on Disney+. We finally got around to finishing all the episodes, which I rewatched a couple today that I needed to really solidify in my mind.
This was like having a bunch of Band-Aids on your leg for me. It was just like something where I knew I was going to have to rip them off at some point, and I was just like, oh, I don't want to.
And then a couple of them didn't catch any hair, and you're like,
no, some of them were actually
really
pretty good.
Yeah.
And I was sitting here like, I don't hate this. This is pretty good. One was so interesting to me in conceit that I was like, I want a whole universe of just this.
I think we're going to have the same favorite episode.
Yeah.
Which, let's start with episode 1.
Yeah,
so episode 1 is if Nebula joined the Nova Corps. This was one of the ones where I'm like, I don't fucking like it. I don't give a fuck.
This was, we were talking a little bit before the show, this was one of the ones where I look at it and it's 30 minutes long and it's an animated feature that took several years to make and a lot of people with a lot of talent. And I look at it and I'm like, this is the story you decided to tell.
Yeah.
This is the story that got you so excited that you put all this time and energy and effort and money into making it.
Yeah.
This story, with all the other what if stories out there, you're going to make a bogus, terrible version of Blade Runner.
Yes.
This is the story you're choosing to make.
So much.
It bothered me so much because, first off, Nova is one of those characters that I have been waiting. For Mr. Richard Dick Ryder to come in, if you will. And I know. They only ever call him Richard or Rick.
Yeah.
But we all know.
We know that he's into it.
I have been waiting for him to come into a Marvel thing because the only use of the Novas was at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy, kind of like as this pseudo police force that they could work both with and against. And I was like, okay, this isn't bad, because the Nova Corps is like the Green Lantern Corps for Marvel, and, this isn't terrible. And then when they killed off all the Novas, I was like, okay, so now you're set up to bring in Ryder, or I guess you could do Kid Sam. I have no affiliation with him. I prefer Richard Ryder. You could bring him in and do the whole storyline where he is the only Nova and he has all of the Nova Force inside of him, which is basically like walking around with the planet of Oa as a heart. And he just super powerful, takes on Ultron fused with the Phalanx, with the Guardians of the Galaxy at his side, and like just some really cool stories. And we aren't gonna do that. We're gonna do this bogus version of Blade Runner. And poor Karen Gillan, I know that she likes the character and she is close to the Guardians family and really promotes it hard and has, kind of embraced the whole Marvel side. She gets the shortest shrift every fucking time, right down to she's in an episode of What If, and it fucking sucks.
It sucks.
The writing on it just makes no sense.
Well,
the plot makes no sense.
If you look at her, IMDb after Doctor Who, it's not been great. So I think she's really leaning into this Marvel thing because she's like, this is my paycheck.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do whatever Nebula thing you want me to do, and I don't give a fuck if it's good. This is what's going to keep me fed the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Because her films...
they've been kind of hot and cold.
Yeah,
the Bubble...
She had the Bubble was
Gunpowder
not great.
Milkshake wasn't bad, but it needed to be tuned up a few more times. She
had that failed TV show where she was like
Selfie,
and it's like, man, she just has not done a lot.
It just hasn't worked out. She's in a movie with Russell Crowe that comes out. It's called Sleeping Dogs, and it's just, I look at her and I'm just like, oh, this is so frustrating because not only do I love you as Amy Pond, and I like her as an actress, not just as Amy Pond, I like her in all of these roles. I think the writing has always let her down, but it's never her performance that's bad. You know, she's really good in Jumanji. She has to hold her own against Jack Black.
Oh, that's
and
right.
Dwayne.
She was good in the Jumanji movies.
Yeah.
I do give her that.
And
that's right.
and she's holding up with some heavyweights. Yeah. I give her credit. She's really good most of the time in everything she's in. But Marvel just keeps writing her these nothing parts, and it makes me double frustrated because if I could bring Mary Jane Watson into the MCU, it would be Karen Gillan. Yeah. She would just play herself.
Yeah.
She doesn't need to put on makeup or anything. She just needs to dress and come to set and be herself, and it would be perfect. Yeah. And,
no, I agree.
And instead you have her in Nebula makeup doing this monotone role with no excitement or energy.
And Drax humor where it's like fish out of water.
Just so frustrating.
Yeah, it's cringy.
And then on top of it, you give her this terrible plot that makes no fucking sense about how Ronan is gonna invade the planet, and since the Guardians aren't there, now Nova Prime has decided to close the planet with this big shield, and everybody's angry about it. And so instead of addressing it, Nova Prime comes up with this ridiculous roundabout way to surrender to Ronan, and it involves breaking out the villain from Captain Marvel, who's I guess part of it. It made no fucking sense.
It made no sense. And the thing that I hated is the whole concept of like blocking the Earth so Ronan can't get in. Did you ever see Highlander 2, The Quickening?
No.
It is not a good movie, but that's pretty much the plot. Like, the sun is going to destroy the Earth, and so they have to create this bubble around the Earth, and of course it becomes a dark, dirty world.
Yeah.
Exactly like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just dumb.
This is
like,
stupid.
It's just a stupid story.
This is stupid, and it's been done better by a bunch of much more talented writers and directors.
Yes.
And if you want this story, just watch Blade Runner 2049. It's basically a dumb version of Blade Runner 2049.
Much dumber version.
And if the villain was Robin Wright instead of Jared Leto. Like, that's basically what this is, and it's so dumb.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, and it's the first episode.
And it made me so discouraged.
It sets this terrible standard where, like, I literally start the second episode, and I'm like, okay, that was so bad. And everything for the last 3 years has been so bad to mediocre that now you're going to be graded based on everything. Yes. Not just this episode, but everything.
And then episode 2 is Peter Quill attacks
It gets
Earth's
better. It gets better.
It's better, but it's still not
It's not perfect.
Good.
It's not perfect.
Yes.
But I enjoyed this so much more than the Nebula one. This was one that I looked at and I was like, oh, this is going to be stupid. And then I realized this is 80s Avengers. I was like, okay, depending on execution, this could be really good. Again, the writing is very hot and cold. I'm glad you brought back Michael Douglas, but he sounds like he's in his 90s. Yeah. You might as well have cast Kirk Douglas.
And I think it's Kurt Russell doing Ego also.
Yeah. They had everybody. Lawrence Fishburne came in to play Bill Foster. I question the build of this particular team, where you have two different size changers on one team. I guess they did that with Ant-Man and the Wasp, but they have different roles on the team. You have Goliath and Ant-Man on the same team. I feel like they kind of achieve the same thing.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
You have no women. I guess you have Peggy Carter.
When you got
and you
Hope
have Wendy
at the end.
And Hope as a child.
But it's like, to me, it was that overused cliche of like, here's a bad child. Oh, let's give him a good child that'll make him good. And it's like, fucking Christ. How many times you got to do the same thing?
This was the one thing that took it too far for me. One, a special mention, runner-up was the ending where everybody's going to die and they have to fly from Missouri to, I guess, Nevada. Because Project Pegasus, this isn't what Project Pegasus is. I'll take it, but this is not what Project Pegasus is. It's fine. We won't go into it, but just know this is not what that is. Project Pegasus is not like this shield thing. Project Pegasus is where you take all the really dangerous stuff and you put it over there. But they're doing this whole thing in Nevada, and they have to fly back, and they have the Tesseract in the jet, and it's like, okay, but then why not just teleport?
Yeah.
What's the fly? I don't understand
this.
Get it.
And the problem with that is it added to an episode that I felt was way too short.
Yeah.
And so it's like you have so many of these nonsense moments that you could just cut out and make the episode a little longer and focus on different parts.
And another thing that fell into that gap, I love that you thought to bring Thor in. He does not need to be here. It doesn't make any fucking sense. So you're telling me that Ego's plan is to take over the Midgard realm from the Asgardian perspective.
Yeah.
Before he does that, he takes his one weapon and sends it to defeat all the other 9 realms, which took the combined power of Odin and Hela to do. And I get that you're doing a Michael Korvac story. That's great. I'm not angry about that. This is so shoehorned and makes no sense. And it's just so that Thor can be part of the story. And I'm like, I wish you had done something else.
It's the spoon feeding they think they need to do to people to make them watch it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I know Thor.
I like Chris Hemsworth.
Oh, yeah.
We paid Chris Hemsworth for 2 days of recording for all these episodes he's in. We might as well stick him in here. And it's like, but he doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense for him to be here. Or you have him be on planet already and be worried about the fate of Midgard. You know, you have some other situation that brought Thor back to Earth, 25 years
and
earlier.
Maybe lean into canon where he's just a guy walking around with an umbrella.
Donald Blake.
Yeah.
Give me some Donald Blake
just
action.
Like, there's your opportunity.
Yeah.
And have him just like walk into the fray and then, no, there's Thor. It's like, no.
Exactly. Or have it be some other Asgardian. Have it be Lady Sif. Again, you don't have enough women on this team. Have your Asgardian be Lady Sif.
Or Beta Ray Bill. We still want Beta Ray Bill.
Yeah.
Give it to him.
Yeah. So, like, executionally ham-fisted at times.
I agree.
Had a lot of that first season energy of, like, when it's good, it's really good. When it's bad, you roll your eyes and you're kind of like, why is this a thing? Yeah. How is this the decision on how you went about things? The whole thing with Wendy Lawson, I appreciate, but I think you could have done better. You could have just had Carol or Maria Rambeau, both of whom were around at this time.
Yeah.
So I don't understand bringing in Wendy Lawson for this. I just a lot of decisions that I look at and I'm like, I don't get it. I like it in conceit. I like some of the execution. Did it hold water all the way through? No, but compared to some of the other ones, it was a lot better.
Okay, so I'm gonna give a little spoiler ahead of time. I won't say what it is, but episode 6 is by far my favorite episode. And what I needed after that first episode was episode 6. Yeah. I needed something that knocked it out of the park, and to me, this one was so middling in spots that it kind of deflated me a little more.
Yeah.
But then I do admit it was obviously a goofy kind of throwaway episode. See, episode 3, which is What If Happy Hogan Saves Christmas, was fun.
This could have been terrible.
It could have, but it was so fucking fun.
It was actually kind of decent.
It was like, I love the Die Hard references in it. It was great.
They got a little too cute at times. There were a few moments here and there where it got a little too cute. They tried to do a few too many things. I liked where it landed, but that initial bit,
like, he didn't need to crawl through the vent like John McClane.
Like the initial bit of Darcy forgetting what Die Hard is, but remembering Reginald Val Johnson. I'm like, this is okay. Yeah. And when Happy calls her John McClane, I'm like, okay, all right, I'll allow it. I do have to ask, why is Happy Hogan one of the main characters in What If? This is the second season where Happy was a not insubstantial portion of at least one, sometimes multiple episodes.
I think it's for them saying, we want a comic relief episode. So who's been the most consistent comic relief in the MCU? Happy Hogan. He was in like all the
I would argue that there's a bunch of people over Happy Hogan.
And also Jon Favreau with Star Wars and all that.
This is I think that's what it is.
And he was the head of security for the Avengers Tower, so it does make sense. It
does work. See, this is the thing. Ultimately, I'm not mad because it does work really well for the story that they're trying to tell. And the whole stuff with Justin Hammer and the Avengers not coming until too late and the Hulk blood, I was like, I don't hate this.
See, I like the Hulk blood idea, but I didn't like the cliche of, part of him's going to grow. And then another part's going to grow.
Grows.
It's like, make him turn into Hulk Hogan. Which also, he was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. How does the Hulk serum work vis-a-vis hair? Because there seems to be a lot of up and down on hair. In the case of Bruce, full head of hair every time. In the case of Happy and Emil Blonsky and others, fully bald, no hair. In the case of Red Hulk, hair, no mustache.
No mustache.
What's going on?
But then also, which is canon, the Edward Norton Incredible Hulk movie where Stan Lee drinks Hulk blood and he's just like, ooh.
Yeah.
And that's his only response.
I always took it as he dies or he's at least hospitalized.
But in She-Hulk, all it took was a drop of his blood falling into her system and she turns into the fucking Hulk.
But there's also, if you go into canon, there's genetic stuff that goes into that. Things, they don't go into it in the show. I'm not defending the show. I'm just saying.
Then here they don't explain why Hogan turns into the Hulk when he gets the blood.
Kind of do. They say that Tony and Bruce are trying to synthesize something. So this is one of their experiments that is supposed to allow Hulk to keep his brain. So the argument is, again, if you go into canon and not MCU canon, part of the reason Bruce turns into the Hulk is because of his inability to process emotion on some levels due to abuse as a child and all these other things, and so that just kind of fully bifurcates that part of his brain. Whereas Happy wasn't beaten as a child.
No.
So he doesn't have that problem.
His name was fucking Happy. He's pretty much happy all the time.
So I didn't hate this one, especially because I could have hated this one.
Yes, and that's exactly what I thought. When I started watching it and I realized what the episode was, I was like, this is going to fucking suck.
Yeah.
And then little things, when she walks out of the convenience store and turns around and looks at Avengers Tower like Nakatomi Plaza, like Reginald Bell Johnson.
And she's holding the giant thing of maraschino
and I was
cherries.
like, okay, that's kind of cool. I'm not going to lie.
It's one of those Marvel jokes that doesn't always land, but when she goes to the console and she's like, man, I thought this would be a lot more complicated to reboot Jarvis, and it boots up and it's an entire room, and Happy's like, you thought the doorknob was the room, right? She's like, who wouldn't think that? I was like, okay, this isn't bad. As far as Marvel banter goes, this is above typical. Yeah. It rings very typical to Marvel banter, but it plays better than a lot of the Marvel banter has.
I did learn by just hearing the voice. I do really love Kat Dennings. I'm done with Darcy. I'm totally the voice, the character, everything. I'm done.
They've mutated her character in a lot of ways where in this, her whole bit was that she's never had a paying job. Yeah. And I just stopped fully in my tracks, stopped paying attention to what was happening in the show, and was just like, how would that work? No, finish that thought. Yeah. How would that work? That doesn't make any sense.
I'm done with her. I'm just done with her.
I don't mind her when she's used well, which she was sometimes. I thought the Party Thor episode, she and Jane Foster, I thought they were the best part of that very flawed, if enjoyable episode. Again, kind of classic What If. You get an episode that's like, this is everything I want this show to be. And then you get another episode and you're like, why are we wasting our time with this? Yeah. I like Darcy in certain situations. Again, you're kind of getting into What If is becoming the tertiary characters that you don't care about, and then also surprisingly someone you didn't think would come back to do the voice of their character, which we're going to get to in a few episodes.
Okay, so episode 4 is
the one that was not in last season.
Yeah, what if Iron Man crashed into the Grandmaster?
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, this was the one that they cut because they ran out of time, basically, due to the pandemic. They just ran out of time, and it only really impacts anything because Gamora from this episode is in the finale.
Yes.
And you're kind of like, what's going on? But that also plays against it here because that episode in the first season shows us the Infinity Grinder and them defeating Thanos. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, are we going to get to anything pertinent? No, we are not. How do you feel about Iron Man meets Speed Racer?
Yeah.
Because that's what this is.
And, they had Jeff Goldblum back. The guy that voices Tony Stark is just, it's too close but not close.
He's hot and cold.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Sometimes it works, and sometimes you're like, God, I hate it.
But this episode was one of the ones of the season where I'm like, I really don't give a fuck. Like,
I cared about this episode because I knew it hadn't made last season.
Yes.
And so I cared because I wanted to see what they did, and I came out of it being like, good call cutting this one.
Yeah.
You don't need it.
No.
And that's, again, that speaks to the problem of what if. If you can take an entire episode and omit it with almost no repercussions to an incredible finale that requires everything to be tied together, that's not good.
Yeah.
Like, you need to write a better story. And I don't know if it's that they're chasing a certain story or a certain theme with some of these weaker ones. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's really bad. Sometimes it's just that you get the tone wrong.
Yes.
And I just, like, this was one that I was just like, but what is the purpose of this? Like, if this was a jumping off point that finale'd with them facing Thanos in a meaningful way, as opposed to kind of a cutout, kind of Family Guy way, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
But that's not what we get. Instead, it's just Tony on Sakaar and the Grandmaster being Jeff Goldblum. And how funny is it that we have Jeff Goldblum? Hey.
And he phoned in that voice work.
Just probably literally.
Oh, literally. Yeah. It was like he had no emotion behind his words.
I was so bored by the whole thing.
It was stupid.
And that's not something you should be with that kind of episode.
Yeah.
We're going to get to episode 6. I was so much more involved in episode 6.
And there's a good reason for that.
And this one I was literally just waiting out the clock.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so you guys going to do anything with my time? No? You sure?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be here for 20 more minutes. You could do something with my time. Okay, I guess this is what we're doing. And we're going to have Taika Waititi as Korg making dumb one-liners in 2 different episodes. And just, what are we doing?
I'm just done with these characters.
What are we doing?
Am so done with these characters.
You know, I don't go to Marvel for Korg,
No,
right?
not at all.
I can appreciate bringing in Howard the Duck.
This is the Jon Favreau thing, though.
Yeah.
He's making a Star Wars movie, so it's like, we got to put Taika Waititi.
Yeah.
He directed those Thor movies, so we got to have him in everything.
And I don't get this.
Yeah.
Why are we spending so much time with some of these characters that are so niche?
Yeah, it's pretty fucking
Instead
stupid.
of the characters you really want to... There was no Spider-Man in this entire season.
Not one.
Like,
not
there
even
was
a hint of one.
There was limited Spider-Man in season 1, but he was there.
Yeah.
There was no Spider-Man
Yeah.
in the entire thing. I thought he was going to show up in 1602. I thought we were going to get Peter Parker. Nope. None of it.
Yeah.
He's not here. And I'm just like, I don't care
Yeah.
about Hela. I don't care about Tony on Sakaar. Also, all these stories are so rushed because you're trying to take an entire movie and squish it down to 30 minutes that you're just like, why are Tony and Valkyrie friends? Like, I can appreciate you doing this demon in a bottle call out, but what is this?
That makes no sense. Especially, it's like, are they trying to reenact the Valkyrie Hulk? But they had spent time together.
Yeah.
And that's why they became friends.
And you're just left kind of being like, this is a good idea. The idea of Valkyrie being an alcoholic talking to Tony. Good idea. not going to capitalize on
Especially
at all.
not in this MCU because they never leaned into the Tony alcoholic.
I was shocked that
they tapped on it in Iron Man 2, but they really never leaned into it.
I was shocked that they openly said demon in a bottle in the episode.
Yeah.
Because they have not wanted to talk about how for a very brief period Tony was an alcoholic in the MCU. They don't want to talk about it. They were afraid to do it. They put their toe in, and now they don't want anybody to remember that they even put their toe in.
And that to me is the biggest missed opportunity in Endgame. When he comes back from space and they jump ahead and he's happily married and a daughter and happy. No, that's where he should have been alcoholic Tony.
Yeah.
Because he had seen all the stuff. He had failed everybody.
Especially if he comes back and Pepper's gone.
Yes.
Like, and that triples down why he's angry at Cap. Is you said we were going to be together, and then you left, and you wouldn't come back, and you were a douchebag to me, and then the world fell apart, and where were you? Where were you?
Yes.
You weren't here. And I agree that, again, you have so many opportunities to really plumb the depths of Tony's soul, and we don't get...
No, they got to keep it happy.
For how important Tony is as a character to the MCU, we don't get any of the world building that you get from Tony Stark in even a mild, early 2000s pre-Iron Man animated series. You get so much more of the actual Tony Stark, it's not just that he has funny, quippy one-liners, it's that he's kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
He believes his own smoke, he's going into the whole thing, and sometimes he's just drunk behind the wheel.
And you add in the fact that you actually have the perfect casting where you have one of the best actors working who has lived this in real life.
Who has survived addiction.
Pull on that to put into this character.
And you do nothing.
And you fucking do nothing with it.
No,
that drove me nuts.
It drives me crazy. I appreciate the call out here, but ultimately it's too little too late, and it's not done well enough. And the episode as a whole, I just ended up being
it was a throwaway.
Where are we going with this? None of the characters' motivations make sense. Nope. None of it aligns. What are we doing?
No, that was dumb. And then we roll into episode 5, which is what if Captain Carter fought the Hydra Stomper, which takes
Black Widow and Winter Soldier and peanut butter and jellies them together.
Because then Winter Soldier is going to be Steve Rogers in the Hydra Stomper outfit, which is keeping him alive and young.
Yeah.
But then he was brainwashed by the Red Room
of Black Widow fame, as opposed to... See, I like this.
See, I did... It was an intriguing...
I like this. This is the universe that I want a whole cake of. For a number of reasons. I like Captain Carter. I think that she's a very valuable member, and I'm glad to see her used in an actual way, as opposed to what Sam Raimi did in Doctor Strange 2, which was not cool. So I like seeing her here. I like seeing her kick ass. I like seeing this world that doesn't have a Captain America who is so integral to so many stories. Which we're going to get to in 1602. I really like the feel of this. I love that the Avengers has Wasp and Hawkeye on it.
Yes.
You automatically get this huge vote from me. I'm so psyched. I'm all in. That's all I had to see. Yeah. You have Hawkeye and the Wasp on the Avengers. I'm in. I don't need anything else. You could put fucking Dr. Druid on. I might actually be more excited if you put Dr. Druid on. But I was so in, and for an episode that tries to balance being two movies, I thought it worked pretty well.
It wasn't bad. I wish they would have leaned more into the... I don't know if it was just me, but there was some kind of sexual tension between Captain Carter and Black Widow.
Yeah.
And I wish they would have maybe... not gone into that, but leaned into that just a little more.
Just a little more, so that when Widow is like, I told you so, or has the option to say, I told you so, she also has this moment where she can be reflective and be like, but I was also upset that your ex-boyfriend was in town, and you were so distracted.
It was kind of similar to the feeling you got in the first Avengers movie with Hawkeye and Black Widow, where it's like, okay, they're not. We know they're not a couple, but there are
they're
moments
so close
that are so close. Yeah, and I think that if they would have taken that dynamic and leaned it a little more into this, it would have been a little better. But you're right, it wasn't bad. I liked it.
Oh no, I like it. Overall, I like a lot of this.
Yeah.
I like that. I can't believe you brought Rachel Weisz back.
I couldn't believe they got her too.
Especially doing this kind of mediocre Russian accent anyway. You didn't need to. You could have just hired, any voice actor. You didn't need to bring Rachel Weisz in for 2 hours to record 10 lines
Rachel
of dialogue.
Weisz was in that.
No, exactly. Movie. But I like that she's the villain. I like that it's a little more interpersonal as opposed to. I really like this line that Natasha has where she's like, "No, I killed the head of the Red Room," and Captain Carter's like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "Well, I put a corkscrew through his neck, so yeah, pretty sure." And I'm like, where was this in the movie? Where the entire time Natasha is like, "Oh, I killed him. Maybe I kind of shot into the room and there was a child there. So like, I think he's dead."
Yeah.
And I was just like, "Where? You're an assassin.
Yeah.
Like this is your whole thing.
Yeah.
And this is the most
and
important mission you've ever been on.
The best assassin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is this?
Kind of like
it
shooting
in?
somebody point blank in the eye and not hitting.
Yeah, weird, right? But I like this. I love Bucky instead of Alexander Pierce.
Yes.
That was so good.
That was a great choice.
Made me so excited and happy, and just this idea that Bucky and Steve went through and got rid of all of Hydra. So it's not Hydra.
Yep.
It has to be someone else. This is awesome!
And then you still had that dynamic of the Winter Soldier movie where one of them is brainwashed and the other one's trying to say, "Listen, it's me. You remember me."
Yeah.
And that was a great, you're right. It was a
I
great
was so
idea.
thrilled.
It was a great idea.
That was so good. That made me endlessly happy. And the turn at the end, I did think it was played out a little bit where Captain Carter's like, "No," and Steve flies up into the thing and explodes the base.
Yeah, it was very
and
Independence Day.
We're all like, but he's in an indestructible suit though, right?
Yeah.
And he's lived through worse than this.
That's true.
So even you are like, "No, he's still out there somewhere." I'm like, what was the point of all this then? That's not an ending. That's not an ending. At least in Winter Soldier, when he falls out of the helicarrier, you're like, "Oh shit." He's not in a suit. He's got a metal arm and super soldier serum, but he's not in an indestructible suit. You put him in an explosion, he's still going to have to survive the explosion. And this didn't quite land there.
I agree.
It also got a little bogged down with the mother-daughter thing at times. The whole thing where she's like, "Oh, aim for her left knee. She injured it on a bike accident when she was 9. I was like, this is hokey.
Yeah.
Instantly hokey.
Which, like you said, it kind of harkened back to the movie.
Yeah. So, not bad. I liked it.
Yeah.
I do kind of question its placement vis-a-vis being episode 5 instead of episode 7.
Well, and that's the thing with 4 and 5. They're just like...
Why are these put
like
here?
4 really didn't need to be there, but 5, like you said, was out of place.
Yeah, it should have been later in the season.
Yeah.
I get you want to show Captain Carter early on to kind of establish her, but it ends with this big cliffhanger that directly ties into the end of the season, but which we won't get to for another 2 episodes.
Yeah. Because...
So it just gets a little dicey.